Welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time. I know I'm offset today. Things are upside down and inside out in my life, so I'm coming to you in front of the curtain today. And we have entered the time of Scorpio. But before we talk about that, whoa, things are upside down and inside out in my head as well as in my physical life. I usually talk about an organization that means something to me. Tonight, I'm not going to talk about an organization. It's the end of October. Voting is already happening in many states, and election day is less than 2 weeks away. And so I'm just going to say, please vote. Please, if you're in the United States, please vote. It's one of the most important things we can do. And we have to turn out to ensure that our democracy is not destroyed. So please vote. Thank you. I'll put some voter information in the description below. Okay, we have entered the time of Scorpio, which is especially fun for me because I am a Scorpio. My birthday isn't for a few weeks, but it's coming up. Very excited. And it is no mistake that Scorpio time happens at the same time as Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, All Hallows Eve, because Scorpios are about intensity. They are about going deep into whatever's wrong to right it and come out the other side. Yes, the scorpion is our primary symbol, and yes, we can sting sometimes. But the phoenix is also a symbol for Scorpios, and we are all about rising from the ashes. Scorpios are often artists or healers, and they are often truth tellers for their friends and for the world at large. And there are actually several of my favorite filmmakers are Scorpios. So Barry Jenkins, who I've talked about numerous times on this show, is a Scorpio. Celine Sciamma is a Scorpio, who we talked about with Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And Julian Schnabel, who we'll probably talk about in the coming weeks, who made The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, is a Scorpio. And then on top of that, we have lots of other important filmmakers. Martin Scorsese is a Scorpio. Mike Nichols is a Scorpio. Charlie Kaufman is a Scorpio. Louis Malle is a Scorpio. Ivan Reitman is a Scorpio. So many interesting Scorpio filmmakers. But tonight, I just want to do a big shout out to Ang Lee, Scorpio filmmaker, whose birthday was actually on the 23rd, so we're a few days late. But happy birthday to you, Ang Lee. I've loved Ang Lee's films since the beginning, and obviously he's made many great films that we know about. We already talked about Sense and Sensibility here. He made The Ice Storm. He made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and a masterpiece of a film. He made Hulk, which many people didn't like, and I actually loved. It sort of deeply touched my heart. So if you want a different window into a comic book experience, Ang Lee's Hulk is one way to go. And then, of course, he made the heartbreaking, beautiful Brokeback Mountain. But before all of that, he made a little film in 1993 called The Wedding Banquet, which I want to talk about tonight. So The Wedding Banquet is about a Taiwanese gay man living in New York City with his American lover. And he's under a lot of pressure from his parents back in Taiwan to marry a nice Taiwanese girl. And they're perpetually trying to set him up through people they know. And they sign him up for various Taiwanese dating services. And so he decides to, he's a landlord, and he decides to marry a tenant of his who's Chinese and a starving artist. And so he marries her, and he lets his parents know, thinking that will end all his troubles. And they decide to fly in for the wedding. And then much hilarity and confusion and revelation ensues. So Ang Lee got this idea to make this film from sort of two things that he put together. And one is that he has never liked the ritual, the Taiwanese Chinese ritual of the wedding banquet in his culture. He's always had issues with it. And then the other thing is that a friend of his came out to him, a Taiwanese friend of his who had a lover, came out to him but was still closeted to his family, which was very common in the early 90s, still common now, I think, but harder with social media and the internet and stuff, but happened all the time in the early 90s. And sort of watching this friend navigate having a life where he was out and then being closeted and putting it together with this idea of having issues with the wedding banquet as it exists in Taiwanese culture gave him the idea for the script for the wedding banquet. And they made the movie on a shoestring budget. Even in 1993, they made the movie for $800,000. And it was a huge international hit. And there kind of really hadn't been anything like it. And interestingly, it did very well in Taiwan, even though there hadn't been a lot of talk about homosexuality or gay rights in Taiwan in the early 90s. It still did really, really well because it was really about issues of family and loyalty and connection, and how we fit in and how we don't fit in. And funny story on me, for years, I assumed that Ang Lee was gay because in the early 90s, there were no filmmakers who weren't gay making gay films. Like, it just didn't happen. And it seemed very genuine and sweet. It didn't feel like the sort of made for TV movie things that happened about, gay men dying of AIDS who went home to be with their mothers. It didn't feel like that at all. I just assumed Ang Lee was gay. I was like, oh, he's gay and he made this little film and it did well, good for him, and now he's having a career. And it wasn't until years later that I saw him accepting an award on some show and he thanked his wife, and I thought, oh, he's not gay. But in the meantime, I had seen an interview with him on a show where he said that all of his films, someone was saying, wait, like, you don't have a genre. Like, you've made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is like a martial arts love story. You've made Hulk, which is literally like a comic book action kind of film. You've made Sense and Sensibility, which is an English period piece. You made The Wedding Banquet, which is a sort of, like situational comedy film, family drama, and then Brokeback Mountain. So, which is basically a revisionist Western to some extent. And he said that all of his films are about people who cannot live within the confines that society is prescribing for them. So that's interesting to think about. And then I had the great fortune of seeing him interviewed live when he was presented with an award at the Provincetown Film Festival a few years ago. And he said two things. He said, I just try to speak from my heart when I'm making a film. And he also said, he was asked what filmmakers he admired, and he said he tries to make films like Stanley Kubrick, which I found really interesting in terms of the silence that's inside Ang Lee films and the silence that's inside Stanley Kubrick films. I mean, their subject matter were really different, and there's so many things that are different about their films, but that got me thinking and sort of melding their films in my mind in a new way. So love Ang Lee. Happy birthday. Watch any of his movies. I like even the ones, like I said, like Hulk. I really love Taking Woodstock. I find it a very sort of lovely homage to the movement that brought Woodstock into being, But again, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sense and Sensibility, The Ice Storm, Brokeback Mountain, you just can't go wrong. You really, really can't go wrong. But if you haven't seen The Wedding Banquet, it's very sweet. It is really a window back into another time in New York City for gay life, and just on many levels. It's a window into another time and a very sweet film, and you know, one of the movies that kind of launched Ang Lee's career. So always cool to look at those moments in an artist's life. And please like or subscribe so you'll see more videos, and I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks for watching Real Takes. Hit the subscribe button below so the algorithms will tell you when new episodes are out. And if you want to support Real Takes, please visit my Patreon page where you can join at any tier from $2 to $100 per thing I make. The $15 tier is specifically about supporting Real Takes, and you'll get behind the scenes information and be thanked in future videos. See you next Wednesday.